here we have facial recognition being supposedly unlawful for police, but not for shops such as the Co-op. That seems bizarre.
It really is. I mean, if you go back to the old Eastern Germany, the Stasi used to ensure that people always had ID cards on them, and they used to keep enormous files on every single individual. It wasn't until the Berlin Wall came down that we understood that there was an enormous amount of speculation and error in many of these files. The problem we have here is not the fact that the Co-op is trying to protect its staff or prevent crime. It's the fact that the technology is not particularly accurate. Current use of facial recognition technology has a massive false positive rate, and that's even without the use of masks, which is going to make it far more difficult for the cameras to recognize people. If we use this sort of technology, our faces become our ID card, something that we've refused to adopt in this country for privacy and privacy purposes. And if there are errors on the system, there's no right of redress, there's no judicial oversight. Even the police have been held up and asked not to use the technology until those necessary protections and improvements of accuracy.
So how come then that, you know, the private sector can use this and not the police, as you were just saying?
Yeah, but even the police have been held up and cautioned because there wasn't necessary redress, there wasn't necessary judicial supervision, and the accuracy was poor. All of this can be said about Co-op's use. We don't know who they've got on their list. We don't know how accurate their lists are. They're talking about reasonably suspected people. We don't know what that incurs, and we don't know if somebody accidentally gets onto one of their lists, and if those lists are shared from one private sector firm to another, you could be banned from a whole section of society and a whole number of different services,
yeah, but Bill,
without actually knowing it or without actually having a right to redress.
Surely the quality of CCTV that we see these days is excellent, so you can recognise people off CCTV, can't you? Well, why should facial recognition technology be so poor?
Humans are very good at recognising faces, but we sometimes get it wrong. The facial recognition systems in tests have only been, at times, only 4% accurate, and they throw up numerous instances of false positives. We don't want people inaccurately identified. We don't want errors on the system, because all systems are prone to this sort of error. And we don't want these sort of systems to have no redress, no judicial supervision, no right to actually have your name cleared if you're inaccurately suspected.
And shoppers adhering to social distancing rules and wearing masks, of course, if they're doing that, then it's impossible to do any facial recognition, isn't it, with shoppers wearing facial masks?
Well, we were concerned about the accuracy of the technology even without masks. Once you introduce masks into the equation, it becomes farcical in terms of the accuracy of these systems.
But it's just looking for suspects, isn't it? I mean, the innocent people, the shoppers, shouldn't really worry about this. Surely, we do know that a lot of shopkeepers and assistants are receiving a lot of abuse. And we know, of course, there's plenty of shoplifting going on. This must act as a deterrent, and it's something that those who are acting wrongly should be worried about.
But the facial recognition company behind this is its business model is based on a number of different companies sharing data. So all it needs is for one of those companies to inaccurately identify somebody. If there is no right to redress, you then can't correct your record. You can't get yourself removed, and all of those companies will have a black mark against you.
So new legislation needed.
Those protections.
New legislation. You're talking about protections there. New legislation needed then to bring basically the private sector up to speed with the public sector.
We've had guidance from the ICO on the police's use of facial recognition. The ICO is working on some guidance for private sector use. That isn't out yet. Even when it does come out, we need those protections for redress, for supervision, and for accuracy, all built in to make sure that this isn't inappropriately used. We don't have the system with the Stasi supervision, where many of the Stasi files were inaccurate.